Hello everybody and welcome to another writing vlog. Yay! This week I'm going to try and get as much work as I possibly can done on the candidate, but before I do that I need to make myself a cup of tea and then finish off a little bit of last minute editing for the previous week's vlog. I then need to start writing scene 12 of the candidate, so I'm a few scenes away from the midpoint. So I'm hoping by the end of this week to get to the end of Act 3. So that means there's only Act 4 to go. Fingers crossed it all works out. So I want to try and get at least 20 hours of writing done this week. Fingers crossed. Keep saying that. And just so that you're aware, it is 18 minutes to 4 in the afternoon on a Monday. So yeah, I should be able to get all of this done. I may not be able to get 4 hours done today. As long as I can get at least one or two, that would be great. And then I'll build it up from there. That's the plan. But first, happy Tuesday everybody. Much like the theme of these vlogs, yesterday didn't go as planned. So yesterday I didn't do any writing. Instead I decided to finish editing the behind the scenes writing vlog number 21, and now that is actually ready to be uploaded to YouTube and scheduled and released at the appropriate time. So I no longer have that distracting me this week, which is great news. In theory, all I have to do for the rest of the week is write, so we'll see how it goes. Because I'm struggling with a few things today, I'm going to set myself a small goal, and that is to finish writing the next scene, which is scene 12. So hopefully I'll be able to get that done today. It's actually, the scene is already scene blocked and I've got a lot of notes and I know exactly where I'm going, and I have a funny feeling I think I need to name the place where this particular character works and find a setting, and once I'm able to do that, I should be able to write the scene with no problem. So we'll see how it goes. Fingers crossed everything goes well, but before I can write, I need to make a cup of tea. Happy Wednesday everybody! So I finally have some good news in this vlog. These vlogs are no longer going to be a series of unfortunate events where I tell you I was distracted from writing, or I didn't write for whatever reason, or I got stuck on something. Super excited. So yesterday, as I was writing scene 12, I glanced over and looked at my Alice in Wonderland calendar, and I realised that there are only, I think it was about 14 or so days left in May at that time, including, I think I counted the day I was actually on. And then I looked at my outline spreadsheet in Excel and I realised there was, I think I had just over 14 scenes left to write until I reached the end of the candidate, and that's when I realised I could write a chapter a day and finish the candidate on the 31st of May or a little bit after. So I'm super excited. I was super excited about that. So at that point I changed my writing goal to writing a chapter a day. This leads me to announce that yesterday I wrote 2,423 words for the first draft of The Candidate, and I'm quite thrilled about that. So those 2,423 words were made up of scene 12, which is what I was hoping to write, and then the next scene, which is scene 13. So I did more than what I expected to do. Because I set myself that sort of low bar goal, I thought, because I'm really struggling with something at the moment, if I set a small goal, I'll be able to hit it more easily. So today, all I have to do is write the scene, the midpoint scene of the story, at a minimum, by the way. That's the minimum goal that I'm setting for myself, because it's, the third working day of the week. I'm technically on schedule to write 7 chapters this week. But I also want to write a few scene blocking notes for the upcoming scenes, just so I can stay ahead of schedule and not fall behind. Although, like the other goals that I've set, this isn't a hard and fast goal. I just want to get as many words done and move on to the next phase, where I go through and do a light revision and then hand it off to an editor and publish it. Fingers crossed. So I'm going to make some tea, because apparently I can't write without it, and then I'm going to get straight into the writing. Happy Thursday, everybody. Yesterday I sent the first act of The Candidate to my alpha reader using Hey Beta. This involved going over the prologue and chapters 1 to 6 I did a very light line edit and proofread using Grammarly. Normally I would go through and use ProWriting and Grammarly together, but I needed to do this quickly and then move on to writing, so that's why I sort of chose that option instead of the usual options that I choose. Obviously I did this so these chapters were in a state to be read. I wanted to remove any mistakes so the mistakes weren't too distracting for the reader. The reader's my mum, by the way. Next, I'm super excited to say that I actually wrote the midpoint scene, and I ended up writing 629 words. That's including, I've also subtracted the words that were removed in the process of editing the prologue through to chapter 6. I can't actually remember how many words I ended up reducing from the draft, but I think it was like under 10 or something like that. Actually, I'll just check. I didn't actually write it down. So today I am hoping to get a chapter written, so it's hard to know because the scenes that I write end up being longer than expected. So I've sort of budgeted, I think, 750 words for the scenes, the 2 scenes in the next chapter, but it could be over. Maybe it's less than that. Maybe I only budgeted 500 words, but the truth is these scenes could end up being could end up being double the length. So I don't really know. All I know is I need to sort of keep writing. I need to be able to hit the goals in those scenes. So if it takes me longer than 500 words to hit the scene goal, then that's what I'll do. But if I can get it done in 500 words, then I'll do that, but it's highly unlikely. Usually my scenes are around 1,000 words now, so hopefully I'll get better at estimating the word count goal, fingers crossed. But I need to make myself a cup of tea and get back to writing. Happy Friday, everybody. So yesterday I didn't get as much work done as I wanted to, because I needed to think about a scene that was coming up that I knew was going to be difficult to write. When I hired beta readers to read the first 3 acts of Duplicity, I had a few comments about the way James sometimes uses French words in his thoughts, and this particular French word, it's the French equivalent to shit. He uses that in his thoughts, and I've had somebody, I know it's not good to give one particular individual too big a voice, but I had someone complain about it saying, oh, I don't like it when he does this. And it's like, well, he's not American, he's not British, he's not Australian, so he's French. And it makes sense that he does this because it's his native language. And this is the language he defaults to when he's under a lot of pressure and he's stressed. And it's like a form of stress relief for him. But he doesn't say it out loud, he sort of says it in his mind. And because you get to see his thoughts in italics. And yeah, so I wanted to really think about this because I'm marketing this to an American audience, and I have a character in a scene that decides that they don't want to cooperate with the police, and this character is French, and she's been living in England for a very long time, and she was married to a English guy, and she's now widowed, and she decides that she doesn't want to cooperate with the police, so she pretends to speak she pretends she can't speak English, and she can only speak French. So this sort of pushes the detective to enlist James to help him interview her, because James can speak French, and to be the translator or the go-between. So I needed to think about how I wanted to portray this. I wanted to portray it in a way that isn't hard to read, if that makes sense. So I have a lot to think about. I honestly don't know how I'm going to portray this in the book, because it's important and it's what pushes James to work with Anwar as a consultant. So it's important, like this needs to happen for the story, because if I decide to go in a different direction, I have to go back to the outline and change the outline. There will be two characters in this scene that speak in French, and there will be ideally a translation in italics, so there's going to be no thoughts of James whatsoever. I really want to take the time to think about this and plan the scene properly, because I don't want to rewrite it in the future. It's going to be a pain in the ass. It's going to be a lot of work to write the scene to write the French so it sounds like a native speaker. Obviously I have my husband, and I can ask him for help in sort of translating it, but because I'm enlisting his help, I need to make sure that I don't have to completely rewrite the scene, because it would suck to then turn around and say to my husband, oh, by the way, that scene you helped me with, I just trashed it. Yeah. The other thing is I'm really worried about another first in series book of mine getting hate. For some reason people don't like, well, that's not entirely true. 60% of the reviewers love Missing and 40% don't, and I don't want more of those review statistics with this other book, with this book. I want it to be, and I know what I'm saying is ridiculous, not everyone is going to like my book, but I'm just tired of seeing other people publish books with a whole heap of 4 and 5-star reviews and mine getting mixed reviews. Some people hate it and some people love it, and it's frustrating because it could potentially tank a series, and I'm just really worried. Or maybe I'm giving this too much thought too, because that's something that I do. I definitely don't underthink things. You get my point. Anyway, I need to get back to thinking about my scene and doing the other tasks that I have to do today. So I'll see you in the next update clip. Happy Thursday, everybody. So over the weekend, I decided that it was time to get back to the Authorpreneur podcast. So in theory, I thought, okay, on Monday, I'll record 2 episodes of the podcast, and so I can release in June. That was the plan. Obviously, 1 day has become 3 days. It is what it is. So that's what you saw me doing in the previous clip. The podcast is quite scripted for obvious reasons, because I like to talk and I don't want to waste people's times. There's so many podcasts out there that are like an hour long, and an hour's quite a huge chunk of your time to commit to a podcast every week. So I thought I want to sort of keep it around the 20-minute mark, 20 to 30 minutes, so it's not too much of your time in amongst everything else that you do during the week. At the end of the 3 days, I ended up filming 2 episodes of the Authorpreneur podcast, and those episodes, the episodes of that podcast are released every 2 weeks, like 1 episode every 2 weeks, so there's 2 episodes a month. And I also recorded 3 episodes of a brand new podcast that's exclusive to the Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee supporters of the Authorpreneur podcast. And what it is basically, the podcast is called The 5-Minute Writing Coach, and obviously it is what it says on the tin. It's a 5-minute episode where I guess share some motivational thoughts for writers who are either just starting out or about to publish their first book, or have published their first book and are struggling for whatever reason. So I recorded 3 episodes of that. So there was the what is this podcast episode, and then the first official episode, and those 2 episodes are actually free to listen to. It's just episodes after that 2 and onwards are exclusively for those supporters. The reason why the first 2, the 0 episode and episode 1, are free is I want people to be able to try it before they buy it, because it's £4 or $5 a month, and they get that episode, plus they get access to a monthly Q&A episode where they can submit questions and I'll answer them. And with those questions and answers I usually share like a few tips, a few actionable steps, and you get a follow-up email just to see how you're going and to see if you're having any trouble or need support. Basically, that's what they get for that. £4 British, $5 a month. In amongst these 3 days, I also managed to edit the very first episode, and it's uploaded to the podcast host and it's ready to be distributed at the scheduled date. The blog post for that is ready, and I've started editing the 2nd episode of the Authorpreneur podcast. It'll be released, I can't remember, I'll put the date on the screen. But today I need to get back to writing the candidates because I'm falling behind, and I really want to finish this and distribute it to my readers. In all honesty, I have no goal for today. All I want to do is write as many words as humanly possible. So I am going to push myself to write a good few hours today. That's my intention. Whether or not I end up writing, ideally for at least 4 hours, we'll sort of see. So fingers crossed I manage to get this done and I don't sort of fall into some unexpected research, or I get stuck on something and I have to research something for quite a long time, because that does happen occasionally. And I'm also the kind of writer who really does need to think as they write, so I can't just bang out, I can bang out 1,000 words in an hour, but it's not a great way for me to write. I feel very stressed when I do that. I can definitely write for 10 hours straight, but it's a very stressful experience, and I don't want to do that. Like, I need to think, and I produce better words and a better scene if I think through and I take my time. At the moment, I think I'm writing about 500 words an hour, so that's with thinking, but I can't think of my writing in that way anymore, because I can't push myself into this words per hour mold and try and push out 12 books a year, because that's not the kind of writer I am, and I just can't do that. Fingers crossed this all pans out and I can add a good batch of words to the first draft. Yesterday I managed to write for 6.5 hours. Yay! I'm super excited. And I contributed 2,624 words to the first draft. It's not a lot of words contributed in 6 hours, in 6.5 hours. Technically, an hour and 15 minutes was me editing chapters 7 through 10 so I could upload them to Hey Beta so my alpha reader can read them. And my alpha reader has made comments on the first prologue to 6, but I haven't processed the comments yet. I'm just going to leave that for another day and focus on writing the first draft at the moment. While I write, I do a bit of research as it crops up. Plus, I do a lot of thinking or imagining the scene as well, and I think this contributes to why I'm writing. I think I'm going to check how many words per hour this is. Yeah, so it's just under 500 words an hour, so it's 477 words. At the end of the day, I think it was around 10. I managed to, that's 10 p.m. by the way, I managed to write scenes 15, 16, 17 and 18. So those scenes were divided up into 2 chapters. One of those scenes was the scene that I was talking about earlier on in the vlog that I was really struggling with, and I managed to write that on this day as well. So that's what I was writing late at night, because I needed to write that when Roland wasn't working so I could ask him about the translations from English to French. I did use that and reverso context, and he did go through and edit some of those, and some of them he didn't. One of them he did, but the longer passages I needed to ask him. I jumped between saying they said this in French and providing the actual French spoken with the English translation in italics, and I chose to show the French language when the phrase was quite short, and when it was a longer chunk of words I chose to write in English and then say they said this in French. Because there was one thing James really needed to immediately translate to Anwar, who was standing behind him, and he did that. And I used that excuse to say they said blah 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 in French. Because I was then, in the next few sentences, I was going to turn around and say, James translated that into English. No, actually, I'm just going to check, because I'm a bit confused. Okay, there was a passage I chose to write exclusively in French because James was going to turn around and immediately translate it to Anwar, because this was going to prompt them to then turn around and interview somebody for a second time, because they've realised actually this person wasn't honest about what they said to both the police and James on 2 separate occasions. So they've lied about this to both people, that they interviewed this person and they needed to go back and interview them. I feel like this has been a huge win for me, because I've managed to get to this scene and I've written it, and I knew it was going to be difficult, and I've only got one more scene left in Act 3, and I think this scene, yeah, it's going to be a long one. I have no idea how many words, but it's going to be a longer scene. I've just got the word count. So the total word count for the candidate is 16,396 words. That's what I've got right up to chapter 16. So I've got 9 chapters left, and then I'm done. Some of those chapters are quite small. They're like 1 scene per chapter. Actually, they're all 1 scene per chapter, so technically I've got 9 scenes left. As per usual, I forgot that today was supposed to be a bank holiday, or if you're in the US or Australia, you probably refer to these days as public holidays. So I've decided to give myself the day off. It's crazy working on a public holiday, and I should give myself a break. So maybe I'll catch up on Animal Crossing today, because it's been a month and I haven't done anything on my island, and I'm pretty sure it's just covered in weeds and cockroaches. Because apparently if you don't go in your house for a month on Animal Crossing, there's a cockroach in there. So that's gross, and I think it's been longer than a month, I think. So I was definitely on Animal Crossing for Easter. I wasn't on there for May Day and all those other things, so maybe it's been longer than a month. I don't know. Concerned about how my island is looking and how neglected my islanders feel. Oops. So that's probably what I'll do today.